Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of the First Nations and Native American peoples. Here where I am in Vancouver, those peoples are the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. But I know where many of you are, you're on the land of other nations. Always, but especially during this difficult time, let us remember our connection to our sisters and brothers in these nations and pray for the day in which we might be with them in right relationship. Welcome. Welcome to Living Interfaith. Know that the whole of you is welcome. You're not asked to leave who you are in your own homes. Please bring who you are in with you. But what you are asked to remember is that everyone around you has brought who they are in with them as well. And all of goodwill are welcome. Now let us sing.
Is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come, whoever you are. You've broken your vows a thousand times, yours is your past and a thousand tears.
Thank you so much. So before we get started, I have some very good news to share. Reverend Stephen and I are going to be presenting at the upcoming Parliament of World Religions in October. I'm very excited. We just got the news about that just a couple days ago. This will be my second time presenting there and Stephen's third, which is very exciting, and it'll be over Zoom. Our topic, unsurprisingly, is going to be on the topic of interfaith congregations towards an inclusive, respectful, and compassionate future. So that should be very interesting. Hopefully we'll have something good to say about that. I'd like to think we will. If you're interested in attending our talk, and there are going to be many, many others, many of which might even perhaps perchance be more interesting than ours, although I don't know, we'll have to see. You can sign up for the Parliament. I just put the link in the chat. So yeah, that should be very exciting, and we'll keep you posted on how that goes. The local Baha'i community is going to be holding a second gathering over Zoom this coming Monday, August 9th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time to continue to honor the Indigenous children who have been killed in the residential school system and to offer support to their families. So if you're interested in attending that, that'll be this Monday. Please let me know and I can get you the Zoom link. And again, our friends from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are working together to gather as much food as they can across BC for the annual Thanksgiving food drive. All the food goes towards food banks throughout BC. This year, the collection date is Saturday, September 25th. So if you and your faith community want to get involved, they really appreciate the support. And again, I'll put that link in the chat. Are there any other causes or events coming up that you'd like to share with the group? Please either add them in the chat or say them now. Yes, Connie?
There's going to be a pre-Parliament of World Religions conversation held on September 12th. The details will come out shortly, but the time will be between 3 and 5, and it will be a conversation on the 5 major topics that will be addressed at the Parliament, and it's an opportunity for us to get together and really talk about what our role might be in some of these issues. And you can go to the Multi-Faith Action Society's website and get more information. And I'll put that in the chat too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Connie has been working hard on that. Bless you. It's going to be really fun. Any others? Yes, Carolyn?
There is an organization or a group called respectforwomen.org, and 4 is number 4. I'll put it in the chat. And they are raising money to run When Love Hurts groups online. Specifically, we'd like to reach rural communities. And so far, it takes 2 facilitators to lead a group. And we've only ever been able to afford to pay one, anything at all. It's just an honorarium. And it would just be really nice to be able to reach more women and to pay facilitators properly. So if anybody has a feeling that they'd like to support that group, would be much appreciated, or even just be aware of it. It's a good website. So I'll put it on. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, and then let's come into silence for a moment. The Sufi poet Rumi has said, "Hatred and rage lay hidden in your unconscious. If you see a spark leap from that fire, extinguish it, so it will return to non-existence from where it came. If you insist on matching anger with anger and promoting the flame of rage, it will spring faster and faster from your unconscious and become more and more difficult to put out. Chase away evil with something good, and you triumph over your enemy in 2 ways. One way is this: your enemy is not another person's flesh and skin, but the contagiousness of their hatred. When that is cast out of you by an abundance of thanks, it will inevitably be cast out of your enemy as well. Because everyone instinctively responds to kindness, and you've left your opponent with nothing to fight against. It's just like with children, when they shout names at someone, and that person yells bad names back, they're all the more encouraged, thinking our words have had an effect. But if the enemy sees their words bring about no change, they lose interest. The second benefit is this: when the attribute of forgiveness comes forth in you, other people realize they've not been seeing you as you truly are. Then they know that they are the ones to be reproached, not you. And no proof puts adversaries to shame more than that. So by praising and giving thanks to detractors, you're administering an antidote to that hatred in them. For while they have shown you your deficiency, you have shown them your perfection. Sri Chinmoy says, if I cannot forgive myself for all the blunders that I've made over the years, then how can I proceed? How can I ever dream perfection dreams? Move I must forward, fly I must upward, dive I must inward, to be once more what I truly am and shall forever remain. Now, if you'll join me in a passing of the peace, please feel free to unmute yourselves and say something like peace be with you as well. Salam alaikum wa alaikum assalam. Peace, everyone. So wonderful to see you.
Peace be with you.
Aloha pa.
Peace be with you all.
Peace, everyone.
Peace, everyone.
Peace, everybody.
Peace to you all.
Wonderful. Now let us sing.
Kosi kosi ibanen keba kosi kosi
How beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. Now, if you join me in our joint affirmation, we come together in peace. We sing together in joy and with love. We worship together in one house, a house with names beyond number. Our paths are many, our beliefs are as leaves, and the tree that we cleave to is nourished by the light of compassion, justice, and mutual respect. May our lives, our beliefs, and our actions help to bring about the world of love we all seek, and let it begin here. Thank you. At this service this week, we're celebrating International Day of Forgiveness, which is usually honored by the World Forgiveness Association on the first Sunday of August. So it was August 1st this year. I've asked Rebecca if she would be willing to share her beautiful, beautiful poem on forgiveness. If you'd like to unmute yourself. And I do have a copy of it, Rebecca. I imagine you have many copies there, but I can also share it if you prefer that.
I have a copy. Okay. Okay. Forgiveness does not mean that I will forget, or that I condone or capitulate. I do not deny the pain or anger or fear that I felt or still feel. I am not saying that what happened was right or inevitable. I am not saying that I deserved it. Nor does my forgiveness mean that I will not actively avoid any repetition. Forgiveness has nothing to do with your wrongness or rightness or mine. Forgiveness simply acknowledges what is. To forgive means that I finally know what happened, happened. It was the way it was. I can hold the past tightly to my bosom, savoring my rightness, taking it into my identity, and in the process watch past grief become a habit of despair, anger become bitterness, and past helplessness become today's futility. Or I can stop insisting that the past be different than it was. It was the way it was. I cannot change it. When I accept what happened, it does not mean that I will have no more sadness. It means that sadness will no longer have me. There will still be grief, but grief will not possess me. I may still feel pain, but the pain will not consume me. My power lies in allowing myself to feel the fullness of my anger, of my pain, of my grief, and then accepting what happened, thus eliminating the power of the past to affect today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Now let's take just a few moments to pray in our own homes and in our own ways for forgiveness, either for ourselves or for the forgiveness that we still are unable to give to others. Thank you, friends. And now when you're ready, let us sing.
This is just a simple melody in the North Indian tradition. You know, forgiveness means so many different things in different contexts and different cultures. So this is just the word forgiveness in different tongues.
Forgiveness, 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 forgiveness. Kasi namakewin, kasi namakewin, kasi namakewin, kasi namakewin. Slicha Slicha. Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Forgiveness.
That was really powerful. Thank you. Thank you. So now is when I usually say that I would pass around a basket. In lieu of that, I will just put our donation link in the chat. So many of you already donate in so many ways to the sanctuary, keeping us going. So thank you very much for your generosity and support in this. And also, if there are any other groups that need some support, I know I would be remiss, Stephen, if I did not mention Doctors Without Borders. That's been doing such great work, especially during the pandemic overseas. So if you have some extra funds, also consider sending them their way. And are there any other groups that need any support? I know Carolyn earlier mentioned the group in the chat. Let's see, which one was it? respectforwomen.org, and said it'd be helpful for them to get some donations, I believe, to help pay for their facilitators. Any other causes that we should highlight right now? Okay, thank you. Well, feel free to add them later if you'd like. And now let us sing.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'm actually speaking this week. The most heart-rending, heart-opening book I've ever read is The Shack by William Paul Young. It tells the story of a father whose 6-year-old daughter is raped and killed by a pedophile, and God the Trinity asks him to meet them in a shack, face to face, so God can offer him comfort and try to explain to him why evil like this is allowed to happen. I'm afraid to talk too much about this book, lest I start out this talk by openly weeping. But later on in it, after they have spent several days together, and the man has gotten many answers and has been able to do some deep healing, God encourages the father to forgive his daughter's killer. Of course, the man responds angrily to this and says he doesn't even think that's possible for him. But God explains that they want him to do this, quote, because you're important. And everything you do is important. Every time you forgive, the universe changes. Every time you reach out and touch a heart or a life, the world changes. With every kindness and service, seen or unseen, God's purposes are accomplished. And through this, nothing will be the same again. I found this book powerful for many reasons, and this is one of my favorites, because so much of what the man learns throughout the book is not that God doesn't stop evil because God doesn't care about human suffering, or that God needs us to experience these horrifying things so we can be punished or so we can surrender to God's will or anything like that, but rather that God is with us every step of the way, through every trauma and tragedy, and that God suffers alongside us. And even in the midst of this suffering, God is using whatever they can to help bring healing. that the tools we need for healing and peace are with us all along in God. We just have to open ourselves up to them. And at the same time, the more goodness and love and forgiveness we can put out into the world, the more in tune we are with God, and the more resources God will have to bring healing to others. Essentially, it all flows back and forth, from within us, out to our loved ones, and then to strangers, and then to enemies, and then back again from them, because we're all connected through God. Although Buddhists don't typically believe in God, this idea still makes a lot of sense within a Buddhist framework because of our teachings about non-duality. The Dharma teaches that there is no out there as opposed to in here. There are no enemies outside of us that we must either fight or run from or learn to forgive because we share the same qualities as these supposed enemies. We're intertwined with them, interbeing. One Zen koan tells us that when the students asked the teacher how it was that she was always able to feel compassion for other people, her response was, "What other people?" Because all beings are interconnected. The ignorance and hatred and violence that other people demonstrate is the same as our own. And the same goes for their love and generosity and compassion. Other people wouldn't be the way they are if it weren't for the people around them and all the events that have happened to them that have helped to shape them in that way. They don't stand alone in their evil and delusion. But similarly, we are impacted by these same kind of events and these same people, like ripples in an endless pond. And so we're intertwined with them. Whatever we cannot abide in these people will be the same things we cannot abide in ourselves, and vice versa. Our ability to forgive them dictates our ability to forgive ourselves. The Sufi poet Hafiz offered the same teaching in another way. He wrote, "What's the sign of someone who knows God? My dear, they've dropped the knife. Someone who knows God has dropped the cruel knife that most so often use upon their tender self and others." So yes, as a pacifist, I'm decidedly all for dropping the knife. But how does that work exactly? Non-duality is all well and good when you're meditating or you're on a spiritual retreat or you're no longer experiencing extreme bullying or violence. But how does it work day to day when your life's in danger? When others despise you and are trying to destroy you and the ones you love? When the state has conspired to eradicate your people? Who am I to sit here in safety and tell you to forgive them? So the short answer is I don't know. And I actually had a lot of anxiety about writing the sermon because I thought it was a really difficult time to try to preach on forgiveness when every other day we are digging up the bodies of Indigenous children that the state and everyone else in the state conspired to kill. And when so many of our sisters and brothers are still being held in subjugation, and when so many of us have used all our power to hoard as many resources as possible from one another, so there's just not enough left for everyone. When we've done such great injustice and harm and violence against others, who am I to sit here now and say, I think forgiveness is a great idea? Who really wants to hear that? Well, thankfully, I have a lot of different teachings from different traditions that I can draw on to try to help us. So one of the ones I found helpful is in the Quran. Apparently, there are two different words for forgiveness, al-af and al-saf. Al-af means to forgive, and al-saf means to forgive and forget. And they're used in different ways in the Quran. And in Islamic teachings, forgiveness is not an obligation, it's a virtue. So al-af, to forgive, is just to stop the process, to not continue on, to not add violence to the violence that has already been done. It's only al-saf that goes beyond that then says, okay, now I'm going to open myself up to this person again. The former is the minimum, while the latter is a higher, and it is considered a nobler type of forgiveness, but they're not obligatory. Muslims who wish to forgive a person who's wronged him can choose either of these. but there's no stigma towards the Muslims who choose to forgive only because they are not ready or able to forgive and forget yet. There's no reason to go above and beyond that if you're not ready. I thought that was really helpful because one of the things, so in Buddhism, there's the idea, some believe that anger is always bad, that anger is always a sign of rejecting what's present in the moment. And so in order to drop into the moment, you can't have any kind of anger. But one is that we do experience anger, whether we want to hold on to it or not. It is part of what's up in a given time. And other times, by not expressing that anger or letting ourselves feel that, we can remain stuck in dysfunctional patterns. So sometime actually feeling into that anger in the moment, not in embracing it and going further with it and acting out of it, is actually a more true sense of being in the moment. And it gives us the power and the boundaries that we need to get out of dangerous situations. So it actually can fill us up with that kind of energy we need to protect ourselves and to end this cycle of suffering. The Buddhist monk Thanissaro Bhikkhu says that there's a Pali word for forgiveness, karma, which means the earth. So you can be like the earth. A mind like the earth can be non-reactive and unperturbed. So one way of understanding forgiveness in Buddhism is that I can forgive you for harming me, but in not retaliating and not seeking revenge. But that doesn't mean I have to like you. I just want to unburden myself from the weight of resentment, to cut this cycle of retribution that would otherwise keep us ensnarled in an ugly samsaric wrestling match. That kind of cutting off, that kind of in the moment, even feeling in and holding the anger, and then cutting off the contact can be a gift that I can give both of us, even on my own, without having to reach out to the other person, because it can be a way of ending the violence. It reminded me of the story in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus is saying, if someone hits you, like if they go to slap you, turn the other cheek. And I remember my priest growing up would say the thing with turning the other cheek is it stops the violence. It isn't just saying, please continue to harm me. But if you slap this way and the person turns the other cheek, they're not physically able to slap back in the same way because you've changed the game. So what can we do to change the game so that we can move on? So there is a way of forgiving that enables us to open up and be in relationship with the person again. But then there's also a way of forgiving that just cuts off that kind of samsaric contact. How do we do that? Pastor Nadia Bolz-Weber, who is lovely and whom I suggest reading if you have not yet, the Lutheran pastor, she has a whole sermon called Forgive Assholes. And she says this is because when someone else does us harm, we're connected to that mistreatment like a chain. But what if forgiveness, rather than being a pansy way of saying it's okay, is actually a way of wielding bolt cutters and snapping the chain that links us to the person? Forgiveness can be a way of saying what you did is so not okay that I refuse to be connected to it anymore. Forgiveness can be like being a freedom fighter. Free people aren't controlled by the past. Free people laugh more than others. They see beauty where others do not. They're unafraid to speak truth to stupid. Free people aren't chained to resentment. Forgiveness can be the light that shines in the darkness and says the darkness cannot and will not overcome. So it's a whole new way of thinking about forgiveness, right? There is, say I have a disagreement with a friend and I believe I'm wronged by them. And I say, you know what, let's not worry about it. I forgive you. And then we try to continue on in the relationship. That is totally worthwhile. I don't believe in cutting off contact with people. I don't believe in ending friendships whenever there's a slight. So there are ways that we can do it where we maintain the relationship with the person that are totally valid and helpful and enable us to keep going. But then there are other ways of doing it where you say, you know what, I forgive you because I don't want to be attached to this anymore. I don't want to carry this around in myself. I want to move on and let go of this. And now that can be yours, the person who committed the action. That can be theirs still to struggle with if they wish. But otherwise, how do we keep moving on and living our lives? I was reading Ram Dass, and he says that he thinks about it that we have a limited amount of energy in our lives. And when we hold on to resentments or anger or grudges, that's giving our energy to these things. So it's setting up little rooms in our mind and posting a guard at the door and saying, I'm not going to have that. I don't want to allow that. I don't like that person. I'm going to give that kind of energy to them. And he says, if you do that enough, you're cutting yourself off from the lessons that you can gain from them. And also noticing the parts of yourselves that are like them. Then you're slowly cutting yourself off. So how do you not give energy to it anymore? It doesn't mean you need to hang out with those people, but what can you do to get your energy back? Kind of like when getting acupuncture. It's because there's a stuck energy somewhere. So how can we put the needle in to get the energy flowing again? And one way to do that is through that kind of forgiveness, to get out of the cycle. So I found these all very interesting, different passages on forgiveness and whether how much of it is in seeing our connection and that kind of openness and how much of it is in walking away. And in trying to piece them all together, I found it a little confusing sometimes. I know I myself really prefer maintaining connection as much as I can, but I also see the wisdom in that kind of separation. So, and that's something, that's the kind of balance I think we have to find. What lands for us? I think we all know ourselves better than anyone else knows us. So what do we need in the moment when we really sit in silence and meditate on the kind of actions that we need to forgive for other people or in ourselves, our own anger? Like, where do these things land? When are these things that really it would serve us better to kind of move on, to stay in relationship, to continue being with that person? And when do we have to let go of it? I think one way of noticing that is just noticing how we feel about ourselves. What's difficult for us to forgive in ourselves? Where do we have those kind of stuck places? Sometimes it actually, I think it's interesting to know when we can't forgive the other person, and then we have a lot of anger at ourselves for having ever been in relationship in any way with that person. Our own part in that kind of connection with them. So kind of thinking about that and seeing how we can let go of our anger at ourselves and our sadness if we feel that we didn't protect ourselves enough from them. Yeah, so I think it's really messy. I don't know. I wish it were easier, but I don't think it's easy. I know I wish it were easy to just say, you know what, I think we all have to move on. I used to tell Samir in working with Israelis and Palestinians that we needed collective amnesia. The only way to move forward is if everyone forgot everything that had happened before this, so we could actually move on and be in relationship. But that doesn't, one is that's not possible. And two is then we lose all the lessons that we gained from what's happened before. So how can we move on and find the most freedom? Because I think God is really in the freedom. So just being with that. If you're in a place where you're not ready to forgive and you say, you know what, I'm never going to be ready to forgive and screw you for insisting that I have to, I really want to respect that, because that might give you the anger that you need to protect yourself. That might be really good right now or possibly forever. I don't know. I don't know everyone's story, but I also know that I want everyone to have as much freedom as they can. I know that I don't want us to all live in the past and then be anxious about the future and to say, well, these things happened before and I don't ever want to open myself up like that again. So I'm going to be anxious about that now. So what brings us the most freedom? I think that's where we'll find God. And I hope that that'll help us. And then when God is right there with us saying it's okay, that we'll be able to accept that. And we won't hold on to our anger longer than we need to. Thank you. When you're ready, Bruce and Cheryl.
This is a song that started life as an American gospel song and made its way to Latin America and was translated into Spanish. And of course, it picked up some of the cultural inflection of that part of the world. And then it's come back to us and been retranslated into English with that sense of justice and purpose included.
If I have been the source of pain, O God, if to the weak I have refused my strength, if in rebellion I have strayed away, forgive me, God. If I have spoken words of cruelty, if I have left some suffering unrelieved, condemn not my insensitivity, forgive me, God. If I've insisted on a peaceful life, far from the struggles that the gospel brings, when you prefer to guide me to the strife, forgive me, God. Receive, O God, this ardent word of prayer, and free me from temptation's subtle snare. With tender patience, lead me to your care. Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. Beautiful and so helpful as always. Friends, let us go forth and try to get some freedom, whatever brings us the most freedom. If it's forgiveness, that's wonderful. If it's something else, I wish you all the best with that. And I just hope we can get as much connection to each other and to God as we'll allow ourselves to. So thank you.